Hey, we're live.
It is in stream.
And we have an end stream button.
You're on.
Thanks,
Thank
Dennis.
you. Thank
You're
you.
the star of the show.
Yes.
And hey, it's showtime here at the 2024 AHR Expo. I'm Matt Wood, and with me here is Heath Schaefer. I'll introduce us here in a minute. We're going to be talking about the S3C, its applications, and some of the cool tools that we have to help the installation and service experience for those technicians out there working on S3C case controllers. If you want to call us about Sporlan Legacy products, feel free to reach out to our U.S. headquarters, technical support at 636-392-3906, or email svdtechsupport@parker.com. And if you are more inclined to read that stuff off of, say, a slide, you can check out some of Jim Jansen's S3C Tech Talks that are on the Sporlan YouTube channel. If you would like to talk to anybody about S3C case controls or our microthermo products, you can call the 888-920-6284 number or email the tech support inbox for those products. That's mtsupport@parker.com. For the S3C products, we offer 11 p.m. Sunday night Central Time to 4 p.m. Monday night tech support call coverage, and then we start again at 11 p.m. We do that Monday through Friday. And microthermo, we have lots of on-call support there, so you can call that number for either of those and get some help from the Sporlan microthermo team. So I'm Matt Wood. I am our application engineering manager. I've been with Sporlan for about 12 years, and beside me I have Heath Schaefer. Heath, introduce yourself.
Hello, good morning. Heath Schaefer, business unit leader for controls.
Thank you, Heath. That was riveting.
Matt, you look really very good in that picture. That's a long time ago.
That was. I actually had one from when I first started at Sporlan. I chose not to use it because I felt that would be catfishing or false advertising. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the S3C case controller, and this we got to remember with refrigeration. There's some basic components. You have your compression, expansion. You have your condenser and your evaporator. And we're talking about case control here. So the case controller is focused on the case. The S3C is named for a reason. I hear a lot of people call it the SC3. I know that, it's just an acronym, but we are focused on safety. That's food safety, service. We're going to focus on that, and diagnostic, and how diagnostic tools can improve the service experience and security. So all those three things are what we focus on with the S3C. Heath, if you had to focus on one of those, which one would you focus on?
I would say service.
Service, they're all important. We want to keep the food
course.
safe. We want to keep your information secure, but service is what we're going to focus on in this webinar. There are three main components to the S3C system. We have our case controller, our valve module that allows you to expand the functionality of the case controller to multiple coils. And then we have our remote display module that can be used to view system parameters and to access information about the case.
What can I expect to see in my case of those modules?
In the case for food, you want to see like
what of those items? What can I expect to see inside of at least every case?
That's a great question. You could see all of them. You'll see usually the S3C per coil. You'll have an S3C, and you have it somewhere maybe like in the kick plate down below the display. And if you have more than one coil that your S3C is controlling, you will see right next to it a valve module to control another coil.
Okay.
You control up to 3. Nice. I should have asked you. I knew you knew this. 3 coils with one S3C main case controller, and you have the ability to mount the remote display wherever. That's right. Wherever is convenient for you.
Yep.
Very good. All right. Moving on. So the S3C, inputs and outputs. It has 3 digital inputs, 5 temperature inputs. We have a pressure sensor. Like we said, this is on a per coil basis, so 1 pressure transducer. We have the option, if someone would choose, they can talk to us about how they could implement an occupancy sensor or humidity sensor, as well as defrost amps. And for outputs, we've got 10-volt DC, 2 of those, 0 to 5 for anti-sweat, 4 relays, defrost, solenoid lights, fans, and a stepper valve, pulse valve. Heath, what do we have for communication options on the S3C?
We can support RS-45 and Ethernet, but I have a question for you, Matt.
No, not allowed.
So if I can support multiple coils, can I just use one pressure transducer?
One pressure transducer for multiple coils.
Okay, awesome. You save a little cost there.
That's a great question. And as far as communications, you dodged my question earlier. What do we have for communications on the S3C?
Oh, okay. So we have one RS-45 port, 2 Ethernet ports. We support Modbus and BACnet.
Modbus and BACnet.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And when you're wiring, what are you wiring between the case controllers? Are you wiring RS-45 or are you wiring? I know the answer. That's a leading question.
So it's really either or. So we recommend Ethernet, but you can. We do have some users going RS-45 between the cases. However, I would recommend against doing both. It would either be one or the other between cases.
Gotcha. And when you're wiring RS-45, there's an additional address you have to set, right? Your RS-45
Yes,
address?
yes. So the case controllers come shipped with a unique IP address. That'll be on the Ethernet side. But if you're going to use the RS-45, that does have to be set. Once you set the case, you do have to set a unique RS-45 address.
You don't have to do that with Ethernet.
Negative.
So we recommend Ethernet.
Yes, sir.
Getting in the weeds here, we'll keep moving. On our valve module, we've got 6 temperature inputs, a pressure input, up to 2 stepper valve driver spots, 2 solenoid outputs, and communication is done how, Heath?
RS-45.
Yeah, RS-45. Yep. Excellent.
And just so it's clear, that's the RS-45 connection to the case controller. That one actually does not go on the outside network. That's an internal communication network inside of the case.
Just for the case controller system. And the valve modules, to define how they work, we have some dip switches, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you use those dip switches, Heath?
So they can be positioned in a certain way. If they're numbered on the side, so there's 4 dip switches. Switch 1, 2, and 3 determine how the valve module it operates. So if the 1, 2, and 3 are down, it'll operate as an EPR. So it expects an EPR valve to be on that valve module. Any other operation, they're going to operate like it's controlling a coil, an evaporator coil.
And if people want to know the details of this, they can look at our copious amounts of literature or YouTube videos. I believe the bulletin is 150-9.1. That's 100-50-9.1.
Yes.
Some light reading, over 100 pages of information about how this case controller works. And you may see different hardware models for S3C product. We have a display module that has more of a rubberized button feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's our older display modules, and our newer, what you would buy today, display modules have more of a flat plastic overlay over the top. Function the same, right, Keith?
Yep, very similar.
Absolutely. All right. Let's move on to some of the environmental considerations for the S3C. Can this thing be sprayed with a hose, Heath? Or
No, absolutely not. No, so you want to keep it in a non-condensing environment.
Non-condensing environment. So that would be no to mounting inside of a walk-in.
Right. That's correct.
And we actually have an offering, I believe, that we, with some big box stores, utilize. We panelize. Is that correct?
Yep. We can put this controller in a panel so that it can go, but this will still be outside of the refrigerated space.
Still outside of the refrigerated space. Very good. What about that display module? The display module looks pretty rugged. As far as I know, you actually could mount the display module.
The newer version, that is correct. Yes, the newer version can be mounted inside the refrigerated space.
And that's as long as it's mounted against a panel in the back side of that display module is isolated from moisture.
That is correct. That is correct.
Very good. And when we think about these controllers, you have a clear plastic or a plastic cover on it, right?
No, you can't see through it.
You can't see through it. You're right. So being not clear, you don't know what's underneath.
That's right. Yep.
So what's underneath that? Is there anything that we might want to know about?
Yeah, some service items underneath that the technician needs to be aware of are some fuses for all the relay outputs. So the solenoids, the fans, the lights, the defrost. We have that's also is in our literature, Matt. The part numbers for those different fuses.
Excellent. Yeah, and I guess we'll refrain from reading off
Yes.
long alphanumeric part numbers on this webcast, but yeah, you can look for that in some of the Sporlan Tech Check short videos that we've done, as well as the literature. So there's a lot of new things going on in the market right now. Transcritical CO2 is growing. A2L refrigerants are growing. How does the S3C stand up to those new trends?
Yeah, it's all over the show right now. So transcritical A2L is very prevalent in the show. So Sporlan has stepped up in kind, so the S3C can support CO2 applications, A2L applications. We are ready for those applications, and in fact, some of those applications we have already been deployed in.
So we have experience.
Yes.
And if I were going to go to my UL construction review for this, would I be able to say we've got an updated UL file for the S3C case controller?
Yes, that's correct. So we have updated to comply with the requirements of UL.
All right, very
for equipment
good.
standards.
It's all for those OEMs out there. They're
That's
all
right.
listening and
Keep them
eagerly
happy.
wanting to know. And but there's more than just the hardware to the S3C case controller. We're constantly updating our firmware for the case controller, and then the Tech Check app that goes along with the S3C case controller. We've made some updates with that recently, haven't we?
Yes, we have. So just to expand the capability of that Tech Check app, of the ability to, and I know you know some of these too, but I can cover them all if you like. But we have the ability to update the case controller firmware, so you can do that right from the app, which is very nice. And then for those of you out there that have experience with the S3C, if they're connected together with Ethernet, one of the capabilities that we have, it's also explained in our manual, but if you update one case controller on the IP network or Ethernet network, it will in turn update all the other controllers that are connected to that one controller. So it's not you don't have to update every single controller that's in your store. Just if you have 4 different comm loops, you have to touch one controller in each one of those comm loops, and then everything else will be updated.
That's got to save a lot of time.
Yes.
In that firmware update, how does the firmware information get to my Tech Check app? Is that stored, in the app when I download it from the App Store?
So I believe it is downloaded. The app downloads the file itself. So it's not like we have to release a new version of the app each time that we update our firmware.
So I would just need to make sure my Tech Check app is up to date.
Correct. Yep.
And if it's up to date, then I have the latest firmware.
Yes.
Push. That's great. What sort of features do we have that you'd want to let people know about with the Tech Check app? What sort of neat things can I do if I'm at a S3C case controller with the Tech Check app?
Well, some things that you can do is we offer a remote support through the Tech Check app. So if you call in through the support numbers that you mentioned earlier, the technician will be able to get remote support. So you can even, it doesn't have to be your most senior guy. You could send a technician out that maybe doesn't have a lot of experience, but we can help them so he can actually see his screen, not his other apps. We can only see when the Tech Check is open, we can see those values and then walk them through, looking at the superheat, looking at the different settings for the controller. Even if the technician is new and he doesn't know, to spot, that my valve is closed and I have a high superheat, we'll be able to look over his shoulder, as a matter of speaking, and help him through that process. So it really expedites that process of giving that support to the technician.
So if they don't, I've heard about and I know about these products, if they don't have a gateway, a Sporlan remote gateway on site, and they don't want to go in through the display,
right,
they could use Sporlan remote support.
Yep.
And be able to see the system and take care of it that way. That sounds awesome. But you can, even without remote support, do some troubleshooting, right? You can do some temporary things.
Absolutely. So it's all time bound, meaning that you can only do these overrides for a certain amount of time. But we don't set a limit on how many times that you can do it. So, for example, you could override your EV if you think your EV is having trouble. You can override your EV to a certain position. You can leave it in that position and it'll stay there, I believe, for 10 minutes. At the end of that 10 minutes, you can choose to extend that override, which will be another 10 minutes. But at the end of that second 10-minute cycle, if it does, it times out and you kind of want to do it again, you're free to go right back into it, but it's not going to allow it to stay in that permanent open state. It's gonna try to give control back over the controller so that if people forget, they walk away, the controller will eventually take back over whatever override was. We do that for, I believe, all of our outputs, and even actually some of the inputs. Some of the inputs can be overridden for a temporary amount of time, as the technician is troubleshooting the case.
That's in temporary overrides are great for troubleshooting.
Yes.
There might be a time when a case is placed in the wrong spot and you need to change the case ID. There are some items, right, that you can permanently override through the TechCheck app.
That's correct.
And I would say there's probably a number of them, right? The most interesting one I find is the case ID. The case ID can actually be changed permanently through the TechCheck app, and that helps avoid or reduce the amount of time with tech support that technicians may need to spend calling in asking for things to get modified. And you can find that in the parameters list by tapping the upper right-hand corner on the pencil button and switching between writable and all parameters, right?
Yep, that's correct.
Excellent. And can I only get this on an iOS device or?
So we support both iOS and Android. We are in the process of currently updating our Android app to add more features, the features that you see listed here. So that is an ongoing project, but I expect that to be done very soon.
Well, that'll be great. So we're going to go through a few frequently asked questions and then wrap this thing up. We get tech support calls into our Sporlan headquarters, the hours spoken above, and there's a lot of common questions. So one of the questions we get is, why are the temperatures not pulling down? What could possibly be wrong?
Yeah.
And what would you recommend someone look at when they get that question? What could be wrong? Should they condemn the controller and just start playing part starts?
No, I wouldn't do that. So definitely look at, just like, think of it like when you go up for a mechanical valve, right? You still want to make sure that you're getting liquid to your valve. You still want to make sure that your pressures are okay, your temperature are okay, making sure that the valve is operating. The overrides that we just talked about earlier, that's a great way to troubleshoot. If your valve is not opening for whatever reason, if you want to try to say that the valve is probably okay, you can probably do an override and force that valve open. If you force the valve open, you see the temperature go down. Okay, well, now I know the valve is probably okay. And you look at why the controller is keeping that valve closed. And then it could be a low superheat reading. It could be a bad a bad sensor reading. So those are things that you can start looking at, and the TechCheck app will show you all of those items on that first screen.
So it's a great tool
to
be able to do the basic refrigeration.
I usually, when I talk to customers, contractors, so one of the first screens I start on the TechCheck app is the alarm screen. What is the controller saying that is wrong? And I kind of start there and then work my way out. So, dealing with symptoms like the case not pulling down, there's usually a reason for that. And it's just, we start with the controller. What does the controller think what is wrong? And then I work from there.
There's a lot of different alarms. And that alarm screen is available. You log into the case screen immediately in the upper right-hand corner of the app. You can just tap on the alarm and see all of not only the active alarms, but you can see the alarm history.
Yes,
too,
you can pull up alarm history. Yep. So if you're trying to chase down maybe an intermittent problem, you'll be able to go into the controller and pull out alarm history for that controller.
Excellent. All right. And how about another one here? So what sort of, we know there's a flow control device in the system. There has to be. What sort of flow control devices could there be attached to my S3C case control?
So if it's attached, it'll probably be an electric valve sort. So it could be an EEV, our SCR line, or our SPW line. We could have things that are still flow control, but they're not physically attached to our controller. And that'll be a TEV, or what is commonly referred to as TXV.
I don't refer to it.
Okay.
And then there are other applications, maybe in RCU applications where we might see the solenoid valve used to control temperature, correct?
Yep. So if it's a smaller system, we can do a simple on-off control with the solenoid.
And all those parameters can be viewed by the TechCheck app
That is
to
correct.
verify what mode is it in? And you mentioned what you like to do when you troubleshoot. That's one of the first places I go to. Is I go to the parameter screen and I look at what are my valves set to? Do I have the right type of valves? I match them up. I put eyes on the system and say, this says 2,500 stepper valve, and that looks like a TEV. I got an issue.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have that at the tip of your fingers with the tech check app. And another common question is, why is we touched on this earlier, why is my solenoid valve not powered up? And why might that be, Keith? What's something I could look at?
Well, so what hits me first, what we already talked about, was definitely fuses. So there's fuses. If you lift the cover off the S3C, there's fuses. But some things that I always do for the solenoid, if I do, I believe I have power going to my solenoid. I measure that voltage. Obviously, that voltage has to be correct. If I'm using a 120 volt coil, I want 120 volt going to the controller. So I should be able to measure that at the controller. And I also want to make sure that the controller is actually calling for the solenoid to be on. We didn't talk about it as we went through it, but on top of the controller, we have a bunch of little LEDs that reflect the state of the controller, and then a lot of the state of the outputs too. So if the solenoid is on, that LED should be illuminated, saying that the solenoid, it's calling for cooling. So that's also visible, I believe, on our display, Matt. Yeah, there should be a snowflake on our display.
Snowflake on the display. All right. Well, I think we're about to wrap this thing up. We spoke about the numbers that you can call, the email inboxes that you can email if you want to ask Sporlan any questions about these products. If you want to see any visual aids to what we just talked about, get on Sporlan's YouTube channel and check out some of Jim Jansen's S3C training videos. Go to Chill Skills and take the S3C training class. And absolutely, if you are not active, if you've never downloaded it, download the S3C Tech Check app. That is a very useful tool. So thanks everybody for joining, and thanks Heath for joining and answering my questions.
You're welcome. Do you want to hit any questions?
Well, let's see if we got any here, because I don't know how to use this, but let's see. Any new bulletin deets worthy of mention? Well, I think we tried to hit some of the new stuff with the Tech Check app.
Yep.
And as far as bulletins coming out, we're always working to make sure those are as up to date as possible. And as soon as there is a new bulletin, a new 100-50, we'll definitely let you know. And then we got another one here about some of the steps for the FPT test.
Okay. The FPT test, that is, as Matt mentioned, so we are updating our bulletins. That is one of the bulletins that is on our Sporlan literature. I don't recall the exact bulletin. I'm sorry, but yeah, those FPT steps and the checklist are available on our website.
Yeah. So if you go to where you find all of our Sporlan literature, you can find details about the steps that are taken in the FPT test. And the FPT can be run on an individual case, right? Through the app. It can be also run through the gateway by individuals that have access to the portal. So that would not be for the general contractor.
Right.
But if a supermarket, work with somebody to do that.
Yeah, I would say the general contractor will probably be the one that's on our website. 263A and B comes to mind. I don't know if that's the right one. But if the general contractor wants, and for our viewers, FPT is functional performance test. So we have one that is inside of our controller, but the contractor can also, using our literature as a guide, can go through, I believe it's 11 steps, go through the 11-step process, and using the features that we talked about earlier, just the opening and closing of the valve to see the system and operate and respond to the user action. And
that test can take up to 45 minutes and down to 15.
Yeah, it really all depends on how fast the coil is responding. The automated one, yes. The one that's manual will go quicker. But the automated one, yes, can take a little bit longer. It all depends on how, if for example, if I do have a coil that is very, very iced up, part of that test, there is some work that we do in there behind the scenes to see if the case is responding to our stimuli. But yeah, it can take longer if the case is bunkered up. But usually it's a fairly quick test.
Very good. Well, I don't see any other questions on here. If you come up with some after we log off, please reach out to your local Sporlan sales engineer. If there are technical questions, reach out to the numbers and the email addresses we mentioned before.
All right. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks everybody
Bye,
for
everyone.
watching.